It's this patch of ocean that just totally haunts our imagination. A place where ships, planes, people, they've all just vanished without a trace, sparking some of the wildest theories you've ever heard. We are, of course, talking about the Bermuda Triangle. But what if I told you the most mysterious thing about it is that it isn't mysterious at all? Let's untangle the facts from the folklore.
Right off the bat, here's what's so wild. The Bermuda Triangle doesn't actually exist on any official map. I mean, the U.S. Board on Geographic Names, they don't recognize it. It's basically a phantom zone, a piece of modern folklore that we've all agreed to believe in.
And that, right there, is the big question, isn't it? How did this unofficial, totally imaginary triangle of water get this global reputation as some kind of supernatural vortex of doom? Well, to answer that, we've got to go back to the very beginning of the story.
Okay, so let's start with the legend itself, because long before we had all the science and the data, we had stories. And I mean chilling, super dramatic stories that really grabbed a hold of the public's imagination. This right here, this is a perfect example. This was written about the USS Cyclops back in 1918. Now, that doesn't sound like a naval report, does it? Nope, it's pure cinematic horror. And it's exactly this kind of storytelling that laid the groundwork for the whole myth.
So, when people talk about the triangle, they're generally talking about this vaguely defined area between Bermuda, Florida, and Puerto Rico. But here's the thing. Because it's unofficial, the actual boundaries change depending on who's telling the story. Sometimes it's 500,000 square miles, other times it's 3 times that big. That vagueness, it makes it a perfect container for any mystery you want to throw at it.
So how did this legend really take hold? Well, like any great campfire story, it started with a few key, really spooky events that became its foundation.
The story often gets traced all the way back to Christopher Columbus. He wrote in his logs about his compass going haywire and seeing a strange light in the sky. Then you fast forward to 1918, and the USS Cyclops, this enormous Navy ship with 300 people on board, just vanishes. No SOS, nothing. And then you have the most famous case of all, Flight 19 in 1945, where 5 Navy bombers just disappear on a routine training flight. See how these separate incidents, spread across centuries, could start to look like a creepy pattern.
And this is what really seals the deal for the legend. That was the final transmission from the leader of Flight 19. It is just bone-chilling. It's all about confusion and being totally lost right before they disappeared forever. Get this, even a rescue plane sent to find them also vanished. The official Navy report basically threw its hands up and said it was as if they had flown to Mars.
So you've got these really compelling, unsolved cases. But for a long time, they were just separate incidents. Until someone came along and connected the dots, packaging them all into one single, terrifying mystery.
This is the moment it all changes. 1964. A writer named Vincent Gaddis pens an article for a pulp adventure magazine and gives the phenomenon its name, the deadly Bermuda Triangle. He literally drew a line from Florida to Bermuda to Puerto Rico and back again and said something dark is at work inside this space. He gave a bunch of disconnected events a name and a place, and just like that, it wasn't a handful of mysteries anymore. It was the Bermuda Triangle. The legend was officially born.
But the person who really launched this legend into the stratosphere was an author named Charles Berlitz in 1974. His book, well, it wasn't interested in simple explanations. He was talking about connections to the lost city of Atlantis, pulling ships down. He talked about alien abductions, time portals to other dimensions. I mean, basically every sci-fi trope you can possibly imagine.
And the impact was just staggering. I mean, look at this number, 20 million copies sold. This was not some niche theory anymore. Thanks to one book, the Bermuda Triangle went from magazine folklore to a global paranormal phenomenon. It cemented this idea in our heads that something deeply, deeply weird was happening in that patch of ocean.
Okay, so we've seen how the myth was built brick by spooky brick. But what does science actually have to say about all this? For decades, researchers have been trying to find rational explanations for these infamous disappearances. So, one of the oldest theories out there blames the compasses. The idea was that the triangle was a rare spot on Earth where a compass points to true north instead of magnetic north, which could supposedly confuse navigators. But there are a couple of huge problems here. First, every experienced sailor and pilot knows how to adjust for this difference. It's called magnetic declination, and it's basically navigation 101. And second, the Earth's magnetic field is always shifting. Today, that line of perfect alignment, it isn't even in the triangle anymore. So yeah, that theory, it's a bust.
Now here's a much more plausible explanation for why a ship might vanish without a trace. Rogue waves. For the longest time, people thought these were just sailors' tall tales, but nope, they are very, very real. Imagine a wave the size of a 10-story building just appearing out of nowhere. That could absolutely sink a massive ship in seconds, leaving zero time for an SOS.
And then you've got this newer theory about giant bubbles of methane gas erupting from the seafloor. The idea is that these massive gas eruptions could suddenly lower the density of the water right under a ship, causing it to sink like a stone. It's a really fascinating idea, but so far there is zero direct evidence linking a methane blast to any of the famous disappearances. For now, it's just a cool theory.
So we have some plausible scientific theories, but they don't really explain everything. To get to the real answer, we have to ignore the sensational stories, ignore the sci-fi stuff, and look at the one thing that can't be exaggerated: the data.
After all the tales of aliens and sea monsters and time portals, what do the official shipping and aviation logs actually tell us? Is this region really the graveyard of the Atlantic?
The answer is, well, it's shockingly boring. And I mean that in the best way possible. According to Lloyd's List, which tracks global shipping, the casualty rate in the Bermuda Triangle is a tiny, tiny fraction of the global average. In fact, you are 90 times less likely to have an incident there than in other parts of the world.
I mean, just look at this chart. When you actually map out the most dangerous shipping regions on the planet, the Bermuda Triangle, which you can see right there on the far left, is statistically one of these safest. It doesn't even come close to the global average, let alone notoriously dangerous waters like the South China Sea.
And this isn't just one data set saying this. The actual authorities, the people who patrol these waters and insure these giant vessels, they say the exact same thing. Both the U.S. Coast Guard and Lloyd's of London have concluded there's nothing abnormally dangerous or mysterious about the area, period.
So if it's not aliens or time portals, what is it? Well, it's a combination of boring but very real factors. This area is basically a highway for hurricanes. You've got the Gulf Stream, which is this powerful, turbulent current that can erase any evidence of a disaster in no time. It's an incredibly busy area for boat and air traffic. And finally, you have simple human error, which was almost certainly the real cause of the Flight 19 tragedy. So in the end, the Bermuda Triangle isn't an unsolved mystery of the sea at all. It's actually a testament to our deep, fundamental love for a good story. We took a handful of tragic accidents, spread them out across centuries, and we wove them into this epic tale of the unknown. Because, let's be honest, sometimes a huge mystery is just more fun to believe in than the boring, statistical truth.
You know, it took decades for the data to finally catch up to the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other modern myths that we all kind of take for granted are just waiting for someone to take a closer look at the facts? What else out there is just fabulously, wonderfully unremarkable?